Welcome everybody from the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. My name's Scott. I'm joined today by Stephen, and welcome Stephen. I understand today we're going to be looking at whiteboard diagrams and kind of changing the look and style of our diagrams. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you for the introduction, Scott. Very glad to be here. Yes, whiteboard diagrams are going to be the topic we're going to look at today. A very useful diagram, Scott, because many people that come to Enterprise Architect think about modeling UML, BPMN, and all Archimate, and a huge range of other languages and frameworks, which all constrain you because they've got their own syntax and semantics. The whiteboard diagram allows you to create a general purpose diagram, with big arrows on it, cylinders, all sorts of things. So let's get into it, Scott. This morning I've been doing some modeling of XML schemas, and as always, I'm going to set my perspective into the topic that we're going to look at. It's the analysis set, perspective set, and we're going to choose whiteboard diagrams halfway down the list there. So we click on that. The tool then focuses us towards a whiteboard diagram, and you can see here that there are some patterns that we could inject into the model. But as always, Scott, I like to start from first principles so that people will know what to do. They can always return to these example diagrams if they want to. So let's get started. We need to create a node in our project browser for this, or look for one that we already have. So we've got here some analysis models. Let's choose this one to put our whiteboard diagram in. So what we're going to do is create a new package there. We'll give it a name, whiteboard diagrams, parking and cloud connection. So we're going to look at some of the way that the parking meter system connects to the cloud. So we'll create that diagram, that package, and then when we go to create a diagram, you'll see the tool is already focused on whiteboards, and let's choose a whiteboard diagram. We create the diagram there, and you see now that we have a blank canvas ready to start our modeling work, and we have the toolbox, which has a number of different icons or elements in it. And you can see these are general purpose things. If you're familiar with UML or BPMN or Archimate, you'll know that when you model in those kind of languages, you get elements that are specific to that language. So UML classes, data types in BPMN, activities, data stores and things. But now we've got a general purpose set. So let's make a start. We're going to use the rounded rectangle element there. We just drag it onto our screen. We'll put it in the middle here, and we'll change the shape of it slightly there. And we'll call it a parking meter.
Am I right in saying it's a little bit less formal than UML and BPMN and some of those other languages? Because it looks a bit casual.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. It's the kind of diagram that someone might want to, sketch on the back of a serviette or something in a cafe, or draw up on a whiteboard. That's where the name comes from, in a meeting. So you're right. It's a less formal diagram, lots of shapes rather than particular types of elements. So let's look at our parking meter. It needs to sit on a stand. So let's put a rectangle in here and reshape this. And you can see I can just easily reshape and align these things. You notice also that I've got a hand-drawn mode on here. I'm going to turn that off for a minute, and we'll come back to that. You can see now that what that does is it changes the style of the diagram from a sort of rough drawn diagram to a more rigorous diagram. I'm going to use some of the icons here. The parking meter has got a clock on it, so I'm going to put a clock in there, and I'm going to put a display. So again, rounded rectangle there for the display, and let me resize that one there so it fits in nicely in there. It's the kind of thing that's starting to look a little bit like a parking meter now. A little bit of adjustment there. I'm using the control key and my arrow keys to make that a little bit larger. And let's look at that. Now we give some names to these. So this one's called the display. And what we can do is we have some options here, Scott, which are very, very useful. So at the moment it's in whiteboard, like a whiteboard kind of mode, and I can look at this and say I want to make the name visible. So over on the properties window, we have a section called round rectangle from whiteboard. And we have two items there, fill, which has been set to false, and name visible set to false. If I change this, look what happens in the diagram. So suddenly that comes up. Now, some things I don't want to name. I don't particularly want to name this this plinth or this post that this thing's sitting on. So I'll leave that. I may want to name the clock. I'll just put that there, but I may not want to display that at all. So that's a useful thing to do. Let's have a look at some other elements. We were talking about this being a cloud connection, and you see here that we've got a whole range of different icons. I'm going to put the cloud one. Yeah. So I'll put the cloud one in there, and I'll make a connection between this parking meter and the cloud. So this isn't a very formal diagram. Is that connection happening? Where is it actually connecting? We're not particularly interested in all of that at the moment. What we are interested in, though, is that sort of general shape of things. We've also got cylinders, which is a useful thing here. And I'll put a cylinder in there. Again, resize it a little bit, and I'm going to call it the meter system. So, and again, the name won't be displayed until I tell it to be displayed. So that's kind of a useful thing. Again, I'll say true to that. I'll put another cylinder in there, and I'll call it the, again, I'll resize it to be the same size as that one using our layout options there. And let's have a look at that, and I'll align those guys there. Again, I'll give this one a name, and it's going to be the motorist profile. So we're storing information about the motorist. So these aren't just casual, these aren't casual motorists. These people that have got some sort of arrangement with, with the council or with the parking meter people. So again, name, I want to make that true. So I can go ahead now and do all sorts of things. I will just put in a motorist and show you how you can combine some elements together. So let's look at this and say, let's get a rectangle, put it in here, reshape it a little bit like this, and let's put a little bit longer and a little bit wider. Let's put a circle on top of that, and again, let's make these the same width and align them in centers. And let's move this one down. We're sort of emulating an icon for a person. So the kind of thing you might just want to put onto a whiteboard. We can use a feature of Enterprise Architect to group elements. And we can say, let's group these elements together. And that way, Scott, they move as a group, which is, again, a very useful feature. And that's available in all diagrams. So let's make a connection between the parking meter and this. We'll change the property of this line to have arrows on both source and destination. So we'll say in bidirectional there. And we can change the style of this line as well, increasing its thickness to make it more obvious. So that's the kind of things we can do. I want to show you one other thing, Scott, which is color. This is a whiteboard diagram. So typically you wouldn't be shading things in a whiteboard diagram, but a very useful thing to do is to have the option of displaying it with color. So what I'm going to do is select this element here and do what we would normally do, which is to go to our layout ribbon and change the color of this element. So let's change it to blue. Now you notice that doesn't change the element. Why is that true? Well, because over here under our rounded rectangles, we've got fill and it's got to false. Now I'm going to say true to that, and still it doesn't show. So what's going on under the hood here, Scott? Well, the thing is that we've got this diagram and the appearance in whiteboard mode. And Enterprise Architect is smart enough to go, if this is really a whiteboard diagram, you'd be using markers that you wouldn't be colouring them in. If we turn that off, you can see straight away now that element gets coloured. Now the same thing with the display. We might want to say, let's make our display a different color. So let's do that too. We'll put in it as a yellow color, and we'll soften that up a little bit so I can change the chroma or strength of this this color here. And I'll make it a little bit softer than that bright yellow. And again, it doesn't display And let's have a look at that and see if we change the fill as a property and say true to that, you can see now that it is displaying. So a couple of different things there, Scott. There are these great little properties to say whether you want the fill to be displayed, the color to be displayed, and or the name as well. So we can turn those on and off for an individual element, which is great news. What I'm going to get you to do, Scott, is to perform some of your magic, and we'll see if we can move this diagram along a little bit.
Well, Stephen, I've done a little bit of magic, and now I can see a lovely completed diagram with the parking meter, the display, the clock. We've got a motorist, a parking inspector, a service engineer. I can see some interactions with the cloud, and I can also see where a vehicle's detected in a particular parking bay. So could you perhaps tell us how this kind of style of diagram might be used to help communicate things and start the modeling process?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. You hit the nail on the head there. The key word there is communication. So we're communicating with an audience in a very simple style of diagram, the kind of diagram that people might draw in their general purpose drawing tool. And that's the message I think here, Scott, is that a lot of people see Enterprise Architect as being a tool that is a specialist tool for doing UML models and BPMN models, Archimate, all sorts of different things, XML schemas. But I'm surprised to find that in my consulting practice that a lot of people don't realize that this diagram is here. And it is a useful diagram, as you say, to communicate things to a general purpose or audience, that we don't need the rigor of the languages. And so you can see that the icons that we've got actually are very commonly used icons. We've got a little clock, we've got a cylinder for some sort of data store, a cloud with its curved edges, and we've done a number of things. We've represented a parking meter. While it's not a perfect image of a parking meter, it's kind of obvious that it is, and we could put some other details on it if we wanted to describe that. We've made a little icon for motorists or for people involved, the parking inspector, the motorist, the service engineer, and we've created a little parking bay to represent the vehicle. And we haven't created a little an actual icon for this vehicle. But Scott, if someone wanted to embellish this further, there is always the possibility of doing that. They could go into the appearance here and say, select a different image, which could be a car, for example. So lots of opportunities here to enrich this with actual images as well. But I like to keep this in this kind of look of this simple sketch style. And just to reiterate here, we have got this the diagram properties, and we can set those properties, and remembering that we can put this back into whiteboard mode at any point, and we can see it looks like a whiteboard diagram. So you may want to create two different diagrams, one like this for a particular style, and then another one for a different audience that prefers the color. So
is it possible to copy everything into another diagram and have the two sitting side by side and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. We can just lasso all of those things and say copy into another diagram. We could also just actually on here on the actual diagram in the project browser, we can say copy diagram and then paste it in as a different diagram. So we could do that. I'll show you how to do that now, Scott. We can just go copy diagram, and let's just make another diagram here, and we'll say paste as new diagram, and we'll give it cloud connections here, and we'll say
whiteboard.
Yeah, whiteboard, for example, and whiteboard mode, say, and let's go OK to that. The diagram's copied in there. Now I can, on this diagram, I can put it into whiteboard mode. That's the two diagrams there, and you can flick between
the two.
And one's not affecting the other. Now that facility is there with all models, and I encourage people to do it. Sometimes you need a technical diagram that's going to be aimed at a technical audience with more detail, and other times you might want to remove that detail and simplify it. But you don't have to do what you would do in a general purpose drawing tool, which is start from scratch and create another diagram. Here these elements are the same, and if I was to change the name of this element in one diagram, it would change in the other one as well. So anyway, Scott, that's a very useful diagram. I encourage the audience to have practice with it, create some diagrams of your own, and be creative about using, as we did, to create other elements such as the a motorist and a parking inspector using the rectangle and the circle.
Thanks, Stephen. I think it's a great simple diagram that would be easy to understand by business and technical users alike, and is a great way of introducing concepts and communicating ideas. So thank you very much. To our audience, I would like to recommend that you like, comment, and subscribe to Sparx Systems YouTube channel. We love your feedback and we love hearing from you. As always, thank you very much, Stephen, for all your hard work and experience showing us the urban parking meter example. So thank you very much, and appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure, Scott.